Hello everyone, I'm Tony Southcott.
And I'm Komet, and welcome to another Human Echoes original versus remake. It's where we take an original film and we compare it to a modern version of it.
Yes.
We haven't done this in a little bit, but as you can tell, it is a very, very happy holiday season, and we decided to pick a very specific movie to do original versus remake for this. It is
Black Christmas.
Black Christmas. It was originally made in 1974. So it has some years on it.
Yeah, it's one of the original slasher movies, one of the first holiday-themed ones that came out as well. And it's a bit rough around the edges.
Oof. And there's a 2006 version, which neither of us knew about.
We're talking specifically about the 74 version and the one that came out today, as of this recording, for 2019.
2019. And yeah, we just want to wish you all a happy holidays, though, from Human Echoes to your beautiful little faces. The 1974 version, we have popped it on behind us for just a little bit of ambiance on it. It is rough around the edges is exactly the words for it.
Yeah, it's one of those movies where, because the genre is so young, I want to give it the benefit of the doubt on some things, but the pacing is so brutal that it's hard to really stay enwrapped with it. The characters are very one-dimensional, and the gore and blood isn't there. It was weird to me because I expected this to be as much red, bad paint as possible for a slasher movie. And it just didn't deliver on those 70s things that I love to see.
Yeah, and it was, I think the hardest thing for me was 100% the pacing on this. All to my own problems, but I had a bit of time management with doing this product, and I had to watch the movie on 2x speed, and even then, it dragged on. I could not imagine watching it in normal speed. It was probably really long scenes, and I could barely do it at 2x speed.
Yeah. And the thing is, I don't mind long movies most of the time. This is not a long movie. It's just a 70s paced movie with very stilted, very simplified dialogue. There's a lot of scenes, like some of the ones where you're seeing behind where it's a first person just wandering around breathing funny. And it's not really adding much to the tension. And that's the biggest problem with that. You look at a movie like Maniac, where it's got a lot of first-person type stuff, there's a lot more dramatic tension there, and it's more interesting in my mind.
Yeah, and I think that's just, the times maybe. It was definitely going towards a very specific feel, and they tried really hard, and maybe it is because of our modern time of watching it now, but it just did not give the same kind of creepy, eerie that I think they were trying for.
Yeah, and that's going to be one of the things that we talk about in our list is is it scary? Is it is the atmosphere well done? We're using a new rubric to grade this movie.
We're excited.
And, we're going to be trying some new things out with that. But as far as this movie goes, I'm trying to think of the things that I enjoyed about it, and they're a little bit limited. There's a couple interesting weapons that are used, but none of it felt like it was really connected. And one of the weirdest things, we're talking about how long it felt. Most of this happens in one night, but it feels like there's just 6 or 7 days that pass. So I'm oh, they're still in that night. They're still in that night. They're still in that night. Probably the only thing I liked was whenever they were making fun of Nash, the police officer.
Yeah.
And some of the instances where the girls were actually being hunted.
They had a very, originality. They were very original with some of their murder weapons. One of them, this is from 1974. I'm sorry if I'm spoiling it from you, but one of them gets killed with a glass unicorn, which was fascinating. I loved that. It was campy and it was fun, and the girl kind of got what she was coming to her because she was kind of a drunk bitch.
Yeah,
but
it's something that the movie should have leaned into much harder, much sooner. Mm-hmm. Be weird, be open, get after it.
Exactly. And go ahead.
I think it's a product of its time, and there weren't a lot of other slashers to really draw from at that time where things got absurd. You think about the first Halloween movie, and it's got a kill count of 5 or something like that. This movie did not have a huge kill count. It had some interesting things, but it also lacked a true resolution to me.
And like you said, the character development, there's zero character development. There's none at all. There's only one person that you get any sort of a rounded character on. But then there was like weird scenes where they just found like a murdered girl in the park, not related to what's going on inside the house. And then they're like laughing at people at their door. It was really weird. It had and then she was crying. It had this weird kind of pacing moments where they're trying to establish that these girls have a fun, loving relationship with each other, and then going back to this horror aspect where they're not happy. It was just kind of strange. The story lineage of it was not very good. But I will say, don't quote me on this, but I think this is one of the first aspects of the call is coming from the house.
Yeah, like this might be the first one. I'm going to put it in the caption. I think that this might be the second time it's been used, according to Al, who was telling us in a meeting earlier. But whenever that happened, I was like, oh, this is where that movie, like that trope comes from. I actually got a little bit excited whenever that dropped. Mm-hmm. So there is lineage here. There's some things that
it made an impact.
Yeah, it made an impact. It became a meme. It wasn't just entirely vapid. It just wasn't that great.
Yeah, I think it's just dated. It's of its times and there's nothing wrong with it. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the 2019 version of Black Christmas. So this literally just came out, an hour ago?
Yeah. For
us. And we went and saw the first showing of it. And there was a total of 6 people.
Yeah.
In our theater.
This movie is not exactly selling like hotcakes. I have a feeling it's going to be one of those that, like, if it wasn't a Christmas movie, they would have dumped in January just to get rid of it.
Yes.
And it's a fascinating movie in some ways because they had the Hawthorne College, and they did some amazing shots. They made things look really good from like the setting perspective. They were able to set some really cool ambient things, but the movie is filled entirely with caricatures, to the point where it feels like it was supposed to be a female empowerment movie that was making fun of women.
Yes, that is a perfect way to put it. So this is a very heavy-handed feminist movie, and I may be a terrible feminist, and I'm really sorry, but it was way too much.
Yeah.
It was way, way, way too much.
The problem is that it was studded completely with cliches.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again. Like they were using, even some of it was dated, like just slogans and things like that you see in current SJW culture and in like older feminist type stuff. And I don't mind if a movie is trying to prove a point, so long as it doesn't feel like it's Superman hitting me over the face 1,000 times. Like, it's so heavy-handed that you might as well drop a moon on me.
It felt at a certain point that they were really making fun of the whole thing, and we actually wondered walking out of the theater if it was directed and written by a man. But it was not. It was directed and written by a couple of women. And maybe the editing just didn't hit it like they were wanting to or whatnot. But I will give this movie good atmosphere. I really loved it was very cold. It felt cold. It was very, had beautiful Christmas lights everywhere. Yeah. You got the sense that it was Christmas time.
The Christmas lights actually added a lot to like the ambience inside the house. Whenever people are being hunted down and everything, you have cool looking frames because you got the different types of lighting. You got a lot of really interesting, as far as the artistic side, it didn't look bad. They didn't know how to direct fight sequences at the end, but I'm very, very picky about fight sequences, like to the point where it's just kind of ridiculous and it's hard for me to like really enjoy it unless it's like a good kung fu movie. Like, look up The Raid. That's a good one. As far as other things, this movie was a much faster paced movie, and it was more fun than the original. I will definitely give it that. It's absolutely bonkers ridiculous in a lot of ways, but it was at least more fun.
It was a lot of fun. I give this movie kind of a campy stuff. I wish a lot of the political stuff that they had in their noggins when doing this was a little less heavy-handed, like Tony said. But the first half of the movie had so much potential. They had tropes from the original. They even had the crystal unicorn, and they had a couple of other things that they're nodding to its original counterpart. And as you know, we love it when movies do that.
Yeah, whenever they accept the old and then come up with something new.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing that this movie does right is it takes a concept that was a little bit weak originally and builds on it and makes something really kind of interesting out of like what the slasher is.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get into any spoilers there, but it's something that I know I've seen parts of it before, but this was the first time it was presented in such a way. So as far as the villain goes, it was a little bit different and fairly interesting. It's just a shame that it was buried under poor writing.
Mm-hmm. And the villain looked really good. I have to give a big nod to the way that this movie looked. We already talked about atmosphere, but the villain was creepy. He had the eyes and the mask, and it was really well done. I had a few genuine, like, kind of creeped out moments, and I think that's because of the ambiance and that atmosphere that they did with this. They also, I love it when movies are doing the point now where they set it up for a jump scare that we're so used to, like opening up the filing cabinet and then like closing the filing cabinet, but then they don't do anything like that.
Like they're just teasing you a little bit.
and I really kind of appreciate that at this point. But at about 3/4 of the way through the movie is really when things started to topple, and I just don't think that they knew how to end it. Maybe. I don't know.
Well, like there were insufferable characters like that were just very annoying to me in the beginning part. But it's a slasher movie. Mm-hmm. Like, there's gonna be those characters because they are either making fodder to kill off, or they're making it so that like there's a strong opposition force, even if you don't like them. So they have that sort of thing for a slasher. It's just they didn't quite reach the end of this without going so far over the top that it ceased to be entertaining or real to me.
Yeah, and it was just too much.
Yeah.
But it was fun nonetheless. Okay, so should we go to our brand new grading system? Rubric.
Or grading system, whichever one.
Yeah, okay, perfect. So we have 5 major points, and then each of them get 2.
Yeah, it could be 0, 1, or 2.
Yeah.
And we grade the movie based on that. And in this instance, the one that is higher wins, but it's also a grading out of 10 scale, so if it still wins, it could end up being a low score still.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
It doesn't necessarily mean it's a good movie. It just means that by this rubric, it wins like between the original and the remake.
Mm-hmm. So the 5 points that we are going to be grading this on is, the first one is directing. Now that's a big one. Underneath that, we have the cinematography, the score, the music of it, and then, excuse me.
Yeah, the directing actually covers quite a few things. It's the cinematography, it's the score, it's the editing,
story.
it's the writing. It's like basically the composition of the movie falls into this category.
So that's number 1. Number 2 is the acting of the movie, because we all know that acting can make or break something. Number 3 is atmosphere, and that can be for a horror movie. Did it scare you? And if it's for a drama or whatnot, did it bring you into the movie? The 4th point that we're going to make is rewatchability. Is this a movie that you're going to be able to watch again at any time in your life? And then the last one, and I think is the most important one, did you like it? Okay, so I'm going to let Tony go first, and we're just going to go point by point.
All right, so for the first movie, I was being a little bit generous about this, because I think it was an original slasher. I gave it a 0.5.
You're going... Oh, he's going half points now.
It didn't warrant a full point in that one.
So I gave... Well, what did you give the remake?
The remake, I gave a full 1.
Ooh.
Because it was a competent, pretty movie in some ways, but it was lacking in every other category.
Okay, so I went a bit differently. For the original, I gave this one a 1, again, because it did have an impact enough to do the call came from the house type of thing. So I will give it that. And it felt very Christmassy, which I think is important. Also, for the my bra just broke. I'm so sorry. I'm really distracted right now. For the remake, I actually gave it a full 2 points. I really, really liked the cinematography in this movie.
Yeah.
The story, 3/4 of the way, it kind of lost itself, but for the most part, I really liked it.
Oh, the shooting definitely wasn't the problem. There were some editing issues where you could tell they didn't know how to do fights because it was so choppy that they were trying not to show what was happening. But otherwise, I can see why you would give this a 2.
Yeah.
Because they actually, they took some time, they found cool locations, they made it look good.
Yeah. Okay, so next one is atmosphere. Now this one's important, or acting, excuse me. I'm stuck at this.
I gave both of these movies a 1. I honestly feel like the first one might not deserve the 1. it's an iffy score, but once again, it's the 70s and people weren't as, like, there were some high-class actors in the 70s, like...
But they're not doing horror movies.
They're not doing this type of horror movie. This is definitely, like, a low-scoring one. And I think the reason why the acting was still a 1 for the other one is because some of these characters annoyed me so much that I couldn't give it any higher, which probably means the acting was higher, but I can't bring myself to do it.
Yeah, so for me, I gave the original a 0 because I couldn't look past it. It was so bad.
The only one that I really liked was the house mom that was drinking all the time.
Right? Yeah, and she looks for her cat, and she literally pulls a bottle out of the back of the toilet to drink from. Like, why? It was so funny. And then I gave the remake a 2 because I actually thought the acting was really well done. The main character was believable. She had good emotes on her face. She was pretty, but not, like, overpowering.
Oh, like, she also has one of the more amazing names out there. Her name is Imogen Poots.
That's her real name?
Mm-hmm.
Imogen?
Imogen or Imogen, I don't know. Probably
Imogen is like, it's like a 1950s name, Imogen. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Poots?
Poots.
Ah, fantastic. Okay, so the next one is, I think finally, Atmosphere.
For the first movie, I gave it a 1 because it is a Christmas movie. It nails that. It keeps it looking like that, but it's not scary at all. Like, because it's so... absurd.
The pacing
and the thing is, like, that big reveal where it's coming from inside the house would have worked if they hadn't shown the guy walking down the stairs from the attic so many times and kept going to the attic and kept going to the attic. Like, if that would have been where the reveal was, it might have been a little bit higher and a little more scary. But we knew where it was coming from, so it wasn't quite as strong there.
Right.
And for the second movie, I actually gave this one a 2 because it looked so clean. Like, I did not think it was scary, but it felt like a slasher. It felt like they had what they were going for, and they actually did what they were hoping for in that sense. I should be harsher on that one, but because they did such a competent job with building up the world of this, I decided to give it a 2 there.
Okay, so as you've heard throughout this entire thing, Atmosphere, I think, is a really big deal for me. The first one, I gave a 1 because it was very Christmassy. It made you realize what the time of year was, and like it has in the name, this takes place during Christmas time, and I can appreciate it. The house was really moody and dark moody. and had like good lighting and whatnot, and I dug that. But I did give the remake, I only gave it a 1. That's a surprise. I really liked the atmosphere in this, but I only gave it a 1 point, so I'm going to stick with whatever I wrote down. But I really loved the winter and Christmassy vibe of this. They even go and purchase a Christmas tree, and they never do that in movies. And I just really, really appreciate that.
And like one of the things that happened in the first, which actually goes back to more the directorial style, is like the first kill that happens has like a snow angel type thing.
Oh,
and
yeah,
like,
that was so pretty.
It was the coolest shot of the movie, and they spit it in the first like 3 minutes.
Yeah.
But like I don't know, like they did okay with some things in this movie. The problem isn't with how it looked or how it felt, it's with how it was written.
Yep, perfect. Okay, so the next one is rewatchability.
0 for either of them.
Yep, and you know what? I wrote that down too. 0. I don't think this is a movie that I'll ever put on ever again. Even during the time, I haven't even seen Krampus, and I think that would be a better Christmas horror movie if that's what you want than this one.
Yeah, it was just neither of these I want to revisit.
If you were to cut off maybe when they get into the car in the remake,
yeah,
then I would rewatch it. Let's do a little bit of editing on there.
Yeah.
There's another movie that I was like, if you edit it differently, I'd actually like it.
Yeah.
But that being said, okay. And the last and most importantly, did you like it?
I honestly did not like the first one. And because of how bad it got for the second one, I gave it a 0 too. Because of how far it went from where it was supposed to be.
Yeah, I gave it 0 for both of it. I mean, the first one is just way too old and dated. As much as we can appreciate what it's done and what it is, it's just, I'm never going to pick this thing up again. Yeah. And same with the theater. It was just way too heavy-handed on the feminist stuff.
Yeah. And like, I was worried that I was being harsh on that.
No.
But whenever we were walking out of the theater, someone was like, the only movie that was worse than that one that I've ever seen was The Force Awakens. And people were dropping stuff like that. They were talking about how heavy-handed it was and how they felt preached to. And they just like, and there was only like 6 people in there, so that's a limited opinion base, but it didn't work.
It didn't.
Yeah.
So, what is your total points?
For the first movie, I gave it a 3. For the second, I gave it a 3.5.
Ooh.
So a very narrow victory for the new one, even though I think if I were forced to watch the other one, like the new one again, I would end up liking it a bit more.
I gave the original a 2 out of 10. That is not a very good score, but it is very old and didn't do much for me. And then I gave the remake a 5 out of 10. That's still failing. Most of those props are for the acting and the atmosphere.
Yeah, so if we were to take it on the averages, we'd be looking at like a 2.5 and a 4.
Yeah.
So like what we're saying is you don't need to spend your money on these movies, either of them, but Merry Christmas anyway.
But Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to each and every one of you. We appreciate that you've actually gone through the entirety of this video and gotten to this part. If you really like what we're doing, go ahead and subscribe and like this video. And then if you really, really like what we're doing and if you've been a good boy for Santa, you should check out our Patreon at patreon.com/humanechoes. We have early content, we have exclusive content, we have exclusive art, we have lots of fun things coming to you in 2020, and we would love for you to be a part of our community.
Thanks, guys. We will see you with more, and I think next week.
Yeah, bye.